trying to make our mock-up look just a little bit better. I'm going to say 10 pixels of padding between these things might be a good idea. And then maybe 20 on each side, 20 between this. This is a fixed width layout, so it can only ever be 800 wide. Later on, we'll see how to make more flexible layouts that will resize as you resize your browser window. And then in the glorious future, we'll be able to make completely different layouts for mobile devices versus very large screen sizes. So this is all coming in the future. But right now, we're working at 800 pixels wide, and I'd like to add a little bit of space between these two areas. So now, a couple things that are going on, just to remind us. As I inspect this left-hand area, this content section is border box because I have a generic rule that will style everything border box, which means any padding that I add is going to happen in the inside of this box, which is great. Let's have a look at, so that is the main section. I can try it out here if I want to see if I want a padding on the right of it, 20 pixels. That's looking a bit better. Let's have a look at the at my final result. That's about how much there is actually between those two sections. Need to clean up that button. These ones maybe 10 pixels of padding between the images. So just trying to look at my padding between the sections. It's pretty close. Okay, let me hit an image here so I can test out my 10 pixel idea. And I do have an image rule here, so I'm just going to hijack it for a moment and say margin, padding, margin, 10px. It's a bit much because they are, oh, but now they're under each other because they can't fit sideways. You know, it really would be better if I had them floating next to each other. Let's see what my margin looks like. It's my margin. And then the next margin. So maybe 5 pixels if I want 10 total between them. That's a bit more like it. 5 pixels, and the next one also has 5 pixels. And there's a bit of a line of space going on. I think I would help. I'm going to have more control over these things if I can make them float next to each other instead. Let's have a look. Yep, same as I did before. Now I can control, now they each have margin of 5 pixels and they're floating left. So just by pulling them out of the document flow, I have a little bit of more control over them in terms of layout because I'm not having other spacing enforced from their container, I think. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so to review, so this is nice because it's similar to what we did in the nav bar. Let me close up and review. Up in the nav bar, oh dear, trouble. Oh, because I did some hijacking. This is going to go back to normal in a minute once I put it once I put the styles back where they should be. So in the nav bar, we floated each thing left and that went next to each other. Then we made these block level elements so that we could control their height and so forth. Down here, we did something similar. So these are all now floating left next to each other, and I've set some margin on them. It doesn't look like I'm going to need to set them to be block level elements, but I could if I wanted to. There's a little bit of space down at the bottom here above the footer. Is there one in the mockup? Oops. Actually, quite a bit more space, so I might even want to add a little bit of padding to the bottom of my container. And potentially to the top of my container too. So here's what I have. I've been testing it in Chrome in the inspector. Let me start making some of these more permanent. So in my main content area, I added 20 pixels of padding on the right-hand side. Inside my aside, I decided to make a rule for images. So this is going to be trouble, but this is good trouble. It's something that we're going to need to learn about. And I was able to make the images look pretty good if I floated them left the same way I did the nav bar, and then I gave them each 5 pixels of margin around the whole element. So let's see if that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good down here. Also, additionally, it looks like I need some more padding above and below the content, so I can do that in the content rule. Would probably be good. Usually I like to put the bigger elements up top if I can possibly. And I might just say, this could be an M's. Let me use the shortcut. So I want the top and bottom to say be in 2 M's and then nothing new on the sides. So this, the first number is the top bottom number. The second number is the left to right number. Save and refresh. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so we have 2 related problems now to fix, and we'll do it in the next video because it's going to be a little bit more detailed. So my 2 problems are related. They both are having to do with rules that are overriding other rules. So recall, I needed to fix this area up here when I had the thin stripe of the background with the salmon background color through there. So I made these links block level elements. So what that had the effect of down here is also a link. It's another A tag, and it became a block level element stretching all the way across. So that's not what I wanted. And right now, unless I add a class or an ID to it, there wasn't any way to say, oh, I'm actually only talking about the links in the nav area. I don't want it to affect the links down here. Okay, now, related problem is I wanted to do something special to all image tags in this aside area, but unfortunately when I made those rules up in my CSS that made these look nice, now I floated all those images to the left, and that meant this image is also an image tag and it's floating to the left now up here, which means the nav is going next to it. Ah, not what I wanted. So in both cases I need a way to specify that I'm talking about only the images in the aside. Here I need to specify I'm only talking about the links in the nav. Next up.